Tapeworms are ancient creatures. The earliest fossil found was in a shark dung that was older than 270 million years, which is millions of years before dinosaurs existed. Tapeworms are a species of flatworm that have evolved to be a parasitic specialist that can infect most animals, everything from fish to whales to dogs and cats, beetles, ants, birds, and humans. Their life cycle actually requires multiple different species of hosts. An adult tapeworm forms segments that contain both female and male parts. The tapeworm grows new segments under its head, which pushes the older segments down until they eventually break off, passing through the host organism's intestines. These contain fertilized eggs which need a different host to hatch into larvae. These larvae move to the musculature of the host and form cysts, where they wait until a carnivorous animal consumes its larval stage host. The larvae will then attach itself to the intestines of its final host using a mixture of suction cups, grooves, and grappling hooks. This is the adult stage, and its stomach is on the outside where it steals nutrients from the host. Tapeworms will grow to the size of its host's digestive system, which in whales can surpass 30 meters, and in humans, they can grow up to 10 meters. Much of this depends on their lifespan and how long they are growing. Tapeworms can live up to 30 years as an adult in their host. While the life cycle spanning multiple intermediate hosts make it sound like the tapeworm has an overly complex and difficult set of circumstances it needs to mature and reproduce, the tapeworm is ancient and has spent its time developing ways to not leave anything to chance by means of host manipulation. For example, in fish, the tapeworm can manipulate its host to move to warmer water, go closer to the surface, or increase activity so that it's more likely to be spotted and eaten by the predator of its next life cycle. The mechanism behind the host mind control is unknown. What researchers did discover is that a fish with multiple tapeworms of different ages competed for control of the host. The young tapeworm needs to keep activity low until it's ready to jump hosts. The older tapeworm, however, wants increased activity since it's ready. They found the older tapeworms always win, even against multiple younger tapeworms. It's unknown if the older tapeworm is actively sabotaging the young ones, or simply it has its own control in motion and the younger ones fail to override it. In ants, the tapeworms actually affect the entire colony by infecting only a handful of the ants. They cause the infected ants to be lethargic, which stops them from participating in social activities, and it means the other ants need to work harder, and they also spend more time caring for the sick ants. The sick ants turn yellow, and their lifespans are actually increased due to some gene manipulation from the tapeworm. The parasitized ants also have a slightly different pheromone signature, which leads to the colony being less aggressive. What the tapeworms do in these ants is reduce the risk of the ant dying from anything other than its woodpecker host. The color makes them stand out, the lethargy ensures they do not take unnecessary risks or age faster, and the reduction of aggression in the colony means they won't fight with other ants. In general, tapeworm eggs can survive weeks on surfaces and can transfer from a variety of ways into a new host. For humans, tapeworms aren't always the final host. Larval cysts can infect humans, called cysticercosis. These can actually move to almost any part of the body, including the brain, spinal cord, heart, eyes, kidneys, lungs, and muscles, and in some cases cause severe infections and death. In humans, adult tapeworms in the intestines are often seen as asymptomatic, though sometimes digestive issues can occur. Weight gain and weight loss are both possible. Tapeworm segments can usually be seen in the stool, which look like little grains of white rice. These can contain live eggs. Often downplayed as relatively harmless, tapeworms lead to nutrient deficiency. They can block intestines and can cause pain and damage and lead to other GI issues like leaky gut. They may also be able to manipulate appetite and cravings as well as other behavioral and neurological functions, though for some reason this has not had a lot of research in humans, despite knowing how much they can change other hosts like we saw with the ants and the fish. It's also known that other types of parasitic worms can influence the host into taking risks, such as the protozoan parasite Toxoplasma gondii. Tapeworms steal vitamin B12 as one of their main nutrients. Vitamin B12 is largely underrated, despite it being one of the most vital vitamins for the production of healthy blood. Humans can only absorb trace amounts of B12 in the first place at a single time. B12 deficiency can slowly accumulate, the list of symptoms being wide-ranging and including anemia, injury to the nervous system, loss of coordination, weak muscles, numbness, increased heart rate and palpitations, irritability, fatigue, and a pale or yellowness to the skin and eyes, called jaundice, as well as mouth ulcers. The human body is like one big Rube Goldberg machine. Someone may present with anemia or weight gain and take iron or try to work out and exercise or eat healthier and see no results. They could be experiencing B12 deficiency, which also causes anemia, and even take B12 to remedy it, but still ends up with no long-term results. The vitamin deficiency can cause the symptoms, but what caused the vitamin deficiency? Tapeworms are common, prolific, and live for long times. Just being a kid exposes us to an almost limitless possibilities for worm infections. It's not so much something that can be prevented, rather it's something to regularly treat. We've talked about how specialized tapeworms are as parasites, but they are still in many ways generalists that can survive in a variety of animals. It means the cure to them is simple and unlikely to ever change, which can be found in many fruits, vegetables, and other herbs, and even plenty of medication. Their life cycle is efficient and effective. The medical industry seems to think developed countries are immune to worm infections, as it supposedly only happens in impoverished places. Considering kids are not bathroom trained for years, the amount of times people get sick in their lifetime, substandard food regulations, and the burden of GI diseases in America affecting almost 70% of Americans, is there really any reason to think these parasites, which can mind control hosts, aren't finding their way to humans? All it takes is one invisible worm egg and the tapeworm can grow inside you for decades. Obviously, it's in the interest of the tapeworm to keep the host alive, which is why it's generally not deadly. However, nutrient deficiency, GI pain, and leaky gut and inflammation lead to a poor quality of life, and one problem snowballs and chain reacts into dozens of others over a lifetime of something easily curable. The information that Americans are hardly affected by tapeworms is also misleading, since it's not like the average person is ever tested, which begs the question where the data came from that says developed countries are free from worm infections. Almost all animals in the animal kingdom trace their ancestry to worms some 500 million years ago. Looking at organ systems, evolution occurred through the symbiosis and parasitism of multiple worms. One worm joins with the other and eventually becomes repurposed into an organ. Most organs in the human body resemble worms. The digestive tract, the brain, veins, arteries, muscles. In fact, humans share up to 70% of their genome with worms. If parasites such as tapeworms can manipulate their hosts and even change the host's genetics, what might be the implication evolutionarily and anthropologically of worm infections on humans? How much of our behavior, diets, and even our choice of which animals to domesticate were influenced by tapeworms? The initial response is to say that tapeworms only infected humans after we domesticated certain animals. Yet without an understanding of tapeworm host manipulation, it should not be ruled out, especially as that very dynamic is seen in other species across the tapeworm's life cycle. There is no reason humans would be all that different. I do think that it is possible to identify the answer through mythology, which is in part subconscious projections of various biological processes that are taking place on the microscopic level. The theme of young gods bringing order to humans by defeating the primordial gods is most often expressed as those gods versus dragons or serpents. Dragons are often seen as ancient beings full of knowledge. In Chinese mythology, Nuwa and Fuxi are depicted as a double helix of two serpents. It was these two gods that gave Chinese culture, writing, and many inventions. In this identification, it seems clear that worms such as tapeworms could have had profound influences on human knowledge and DNA, which would become the folklore and mythology of dragons around the world. The other piece of evidence is that herbs or fruits with known anti-parasitic effects are often named something related to worms or dragons, such as tarragon, wormwood, and dragon fruit. I would like to study the etymology of various languages from around the world to see the names of their local plants, spices, and herbs with known anti-parasitic effects and see if they follow that naming trend. Certainly, parasites often do more harm than good, as their role suggests, but it is also impossible to definitively say that they did not contribute any knowledge to human intelligence or impact neurological development over the course of tens of thousands of years, and longer if you consider other parasitic worms. Humans are ecosystems where many organisms fight to live in. The demons and dragons from folklore were most often projections of these largely unseeable forces. Though for tapeworms, they could probably be seen after the death of a human, only inspiring the dragon stories like the lindworm, especially during medieval times when waste was known to be poorly disposed of. And still the lore is clear that dragons contain vast knowledge and power, so who is to say that tapeworms, being primordial dragons who specialized in host manipulation, could not have contributed their knowledge to humans and altered their DNA, at the same time draining them of nutrients? Thanks for watching.